Hey guys! Tonight we drift gently into another time, another way of living, one shaped by earth and stars and the steady beat of ritual. We're headed into the heart of the Aztec Empire, but not into the grand temples or the tales written in conquest. No, we're going somewhere quieter, softer, a place where celebration begins not with a shout but with a whisper. The city is still half asleep. The moon hangs low, pale against the smoke of early morning hearths, and somewhere just outside your door, someone is lighting the first little fire of the day. This is the calm before the drums, the moment before music walks out into the streets. And in this part of the world, celebration is never just a holiday. It's a rhythm that holds life together. Now, before we slip fully into that world, take a moment, just a small one. If these stories bring you a sense of calm, or if they help you drift off a little easier, feel free to tap the like button and subscribe, only if it feels right to you. I always enjoy seeing your comments too, especially the ones telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. It's comforting somehow, knowing how far this little circle of sleepy wanderers has grown. So maybe dim the lights, adjust your pillow, let the hum of a fan or a soft night sound fill your space. And let's settle in together for tonight's slow walk through history. You are not anyone important. Not in the way the Empire would count importance anyway. You grind maize. You sweep the stone courtyard of a noble's house. You carry baskets to market when the sun rises. But in the days leading to festival, even a small pair of hands like yours is parallel of something much bigger. It's not just a ritual, it's a remembering, a pattern passed from grandmother to grandchild, from elder to dancer, from cook to priest. And today, you will help lay that pattern down, like weaving another strand into a cloth already generations long. Your home is simple. Adobe walls pressed from lakebed clay, a roof stitched with verreeds, and a mat made from woven fibre. The mat is where you sleep, eat, and kneel to whisper short prayers. In the corner, tucked between shadows and morning light, rests a small clay figurine. It isn't elaborate. Its face is worn smooth by years of smoke and handling, but it holds weight, that little figure. It's been given crushed flowers, cocoa dust, corn husks tied like offerings. You've seen your mother lean her head against it when the rains came too hard or didn't come at all. And now, with the festival near, you lit a small taper in its bowl last night and asked for a clear sky. Outside, the city of Tenochtitlan stirs. You hear it like breath under a blanket, the sound of sandals brushing across stone, the occasional cough, the quiet laughter of someone too tired to be awake but too excited to stay in bed. The festival begins at sunrise, but really, it started days ago. The market swelled with dried chilies and squashes. The weavers spun bright-coloured cloaks, and even the fishermen began to set aside their finest catches. Everyone gives something. No one stays untouched. And now, as you prepare to step outside, you smell it. That faint, bitter-sweet drift of copal burning somewhere nearby. The smoke is gentle. It doesn't rush. It curls like fingers through the street corners, mixing with the early scent of boiling maize. In a few hours there will be drumming, there will be dancers with ankle shells, there will be flowers laid in spirals on the temple floor. But right now, it's just you, the smoke, and the slow hush of a city holding its breath before the joy. The air outside is soft with warmth that has not yet arrived. It's still early, and the sun sits low behind the lake's distant mist, stretching a pale blue over the tops of the temples like a promise. You stand at the threshold of your little home for a while, just breathing. The morning carries scents as real as touch. There's the wet clay smell of the street, where night dew still clings to stone. There's the slow-burning resin of copal from the neighbour's shrine, trailing into your nose and settling somewhere behind your eyes. And there's the unmistakable presence of food beginning its quiet ritual. grains sizzling on a griddle, squash being split open with a soft thump, the faint sweet tang of ground cacao melting over a fire not far off. These are not the loud flavours of feast day itself, these are the background notes, the hushed undertones that build the music before the melody begins. You begin walking, not with purpose exactly, not yet, but in that unhurried rhythm that fills a day when everyone knows their place and no one needs to rush. Others are out too, just a few for now. Mostly women like yourself sweeping the paths with long bundled reeds, bending over pots or calling to one another across rooftops. There's something different in their voices today. Softer, brighter. Even the laughter feels like a blessing. No one is scolding. No one hurries children along. This is festival morning and everything is allowed to be slow. Your feet know the way before you ask them to. Down the slope of the neighbourhood's lane, past the stone that marks where the water comes in during rainy season, and along the edge of the canal where floating gardens rise like wet green poems. You catch a glimpse of your own reflection in the water, just a flicker of a face woven with sleep, touched by smoke surrounded by the ripples of paddling ducks. You almost smile. Not because anything happened, but because this moment is happening. And for some reason that feels like enough. You're headed toward the marketplace, though you don't need to buy anything. It's where the women will gather before the first temple song. Not inside the stalls, but behind them, in the open shade where fruit crates become benches and water jugs sit in cool baskets. As you turn the corner, you hear the rising hush of conversation. Not loud, not excited, just the warm hum of many voices all talking about the same thing in different ways. Someone mentions that this year's feathers are especially bright. Someone else says they heard the dancers will wear bells made from real copper, not shell. Another woman, older than the rest, sits with her back against a pillar and murmurs that she dreamed of rain but woke to dry ground. The others pause just long enough to listen, then nod. Then go on peeling tamarind or weaving flower chains. You settle among them with ease. No one needs to ask why you're here. The day has its own gravity, pulling everyone gently. One of the girls hands you a bowl still warm from the fire, filled with a kind of sweet masa flavoured with crushed squash seeds. You take it and say thank you, but quietly, because words feel almost too heavy for a morning like this. Someone else has brought a small clay flute and is softly trying to coax a tune from it. The notes keep slipping, like birds trying to find the right branch, and somehow that's perfect. As the sun finally crests above the temple top, a long, low drum begins to beat. One single sound. Not fast, not loud, just one note held out into the morning like a breath you didn't know you were holding. The women fall still for a moment. Not with fear, not with awe, just with recognition. The festival has begun, not with fire or fanfare, but with one long drumbeat threading itself into the wind. You set your bowl aside, stand and smooth the front of your tunic. It's not new, not fancy, but you embroidered the edge just for today, little looping vines with tiny blossoms in yellow thread. Your fingers made those loops in the dark when no one else was watching, a gift from your hands to the day itself. The others rise too, slowly, together, some carrying bundles, some with children on their hips, all moving in the same direction. Not because they were told to, but because that's how it has always been. The path from here to the temple square is lined with petals already. Someone's family must have been up before the birds. A few children toss more as they walk, scattering colour like laughter across the dust. You step into the moving tide of bodies, of voices, of warmth. The city breathes around you, waking up not with alarm, but with invitation. The festival is not a spectacle to watch, it is something to step into, to become part of, and you already have. The path to the temple square is not long, but today feels like walking through the inside of a song. Your feet know this road by shape and habit, yet every time festival day comes, it seems changed. Not in its structure, but in the way the world leans into it. The houses on either side wear garlands of marigolds looped from door to door like a quiet celebration of light. They don't glitter. They don't boast, but they shine all the same, glowing gold against adobe walls, each petal holding a tiny breath of warmth. Children dart between legs and baskets, their hands stained with flower pollen, and their faces painted with uneven strokes of red and black. Some wear feathered caps far too large for their small heads, and walk with the exaggerated seriousness of someone mimicking a priest. No one corrects them. No one scolds. The day belongs to them as much as to the elders. You walk beside women you've known your whole life, yet rarely speak to beyond morning greetings or a nod across the canal. But today, there is no distance. One of them slips her arm gently through yours without a word. Another adjusts the cloth bundle on her back and hums a tune from her childhood, the notes barely louder than the breeze, but just enough to make a few others join in. It isn't rehearsed. It doesn't need to be. The melody is simple, meant for long walks and shared breath, passed down like a recipe or a lullaby. You don't know the words, not all of them, but the tune finds its way out of your mouth anyway, like it was waiting for today to return. Ahead, the temple rises, not a towering giant like those built for war gods or kings, but a modest house of worship with stone steps worn smooth by years of bare feet. It's dressed now, as the city is dressed, in banners of dyed cloth and woven rushes. Smoke curls from the brazier at its base, thick and white, drifting toward the sky like the temple itself is exhaling. Near the entrance, the priests begin to gather, not in silence but in low conversation, arranging offerings, adjusting their painted masks, brushing ash from their robes. Their movements are careful but not hurried. They move like those who know that time is not something to chase, only something to meet gently. You're not here to enter the temple. That space is held for those whose hands know the old rituals with precision. But the square is open to all, and it is here, in this open courtyard of stone and light and people, that the festival truly lives. You find a place near the edge of the square where the sun has not yet burned away the morning shade. Others settle beside you. A grandmother fans herself with a folded palm leaf. A young man carries in a clay vessel of water and pours it into a communal bowl at the centre of a flower ring. The splash is soft, but it seems to echo. Then the music begins, not from instruments yet, but from voices. A slow chant, low and steady, rising from the temple stairs and then spreading outward like a ripple in the lake. The sound reaches your chest before your ears truly catch the words. It vibrates, gentle and grounding, like a hand placed over your heart. You close your eyes for a moment, just one, and in that blink of darkness, the chant becomes your own breath. The drums follow, not loud, not wild, just a slow repeating rhythm that matches the pace of footsteps, of harvest, of sleep. This is not performance, it is remembering. As the square fills, dancers begin to step into the open space. They are barefoot, their ankles dressed in bands of shells that rattle like rain on rooftops. Their costumes are not for show, they carry meaning. Feathers represent air, painted spirals represent water. Bone pendants honour those who've walked this path before. Every movement is a prayer without words, and as they dance, the rhythm pulls the square into one slow, breathing body. Even those sitting still sway slightly, as if their muscles have remembered the steps from lifetimes ago. A woman beside you leans in, her voice a whisper meant only for your ear. She says her mother danced here once, many festivals ago, and wore the same bead she now carries in her pouch. You nod, because you understand. Everyone here carries someone, in memory, in cloth, in the story stitched into the seams of their sleeves. No one celebrates alone, even when standing apart. The sun climbs higher now, soft but sure, and the scent of roasting maize thickens in the air. Someone passes a cup to you, warm, made of clay, filled with a spiced drink that tastes like time itself. You sip slowly, letting it sit on your tongue. Around you the city sways, sings, remembers. And you are not watching the ritual. You're inside it. By now the square feels full, not just with bodies, but with something heavier and softer at the same time. It's as if the city has inhaled and is holding that breath, not out of fear, but reverence. Even the children who moments ago dashed around with arms full of petals and mischief now sit still, their eyes round and wide, drawn by the beat that has settled into every surface. The stone beneath you almost hums. Your own heartbeat slows to match it. The drums aren't loud, they aren't frantic, they just are. Deep, even, patient, like the lake water beyond the city, like footsteps long buried beneath the dust of centuries. The dancers are moving faster now, but not wildly. Their motion is layered, each body turning and stepping not to perform, but to remember. They twist and sweep in arcs that echo the sun's own journey. Their feathers shimmer, not like jewels, but like birds caught mid-flight. The shells around their ankles chime in soft waves, brushing against the silence between beats. No one speaks, no one claps. This isn't a show, it's a return, and you feel it. Somewhere deep in your bones, in the muscles of your back that have carried baskets, in the ache of your feet that have known these streets since before you could name them. This dance isn't for the gods alone. It's for the ground, for the air, for you. A wind rises, faint but sharp-edged. It brushes your cheek and moves through the crowd like a message. The banners overhead flutter, releasing the scent of reed mats warming in the sun and the thick perfume of crushed blossoms trodden underfoot. A hush falls again even as the drums continue. The dancers pause at the centre of the square, each one still as stone, breath visible in the sunlight, arms lifted not to gesture but to offer. There is something about stillness in the middle of motion that feels like the truest form of prayer. And here, in this pause, something shifts. From the temple steps, a figure begins to descend. The priest is not tall, not broad, but he moves with the kind of gravity that draws eyes like water drawn into a well. His face is marked with white ash, his eyes ringed in black, not to frighten, but to cross into a state where person becomes purpose. He carries a bowl, and from it rises a dark curling smoke sharper than the sweet burn of morning copal. The scent stings slightly, like bark split open, and makes your eyes water, though not unpleasantly. It is the smell of endings and beginnings, of night and sun mingling. He walks the circle once, slowly, scattering smoke in careful arcs. Wherever it passes, people bow their heads, not in fear, not in shame, but in recognition. You lower yours too. The ground is warm now. The stone under your hands feels smoother than before. Your breath joins the others around you. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of quiet inhalations and exhalations blending into a single rhythm. The smoke curls through hair, cloth, air. And somewhere in that dense swirl of scent and sunlight, you remember your grandmother's voice murmuring blessings over dough, her thumb brushing your forehead with a prayer shaped from nothing more than touch. The priest finishes the circle. He steps back. The drums stop, just like that. No fade, no signal, just stillness, sudden and deep. It is not empty. It is full of all that has been said without speaking. The silence stretches, and no one moves. Even the birds seem to pause in their wing beats above. Then a voice rises. Old, cracked, but strong. A woman near the temple wall begins to sing. It's not the song of a performer. It's the song of someone who sings because they must. Her voice wavers, catches, then strengthens. Others join in. Not all at once, not in harmony, but in shared memory. The melody is uneven, like the stones beneath your feet. But it holds, gathers strength, and soon the square is wrapped in it. Not just the melody, but the feeling. That strange, soft ache of being part of something too big to name. You close your eyes again, and in the warmth of the square, in the circle of voices rising like morning mist, you no longer feel like someone watching a ceremony. You feel like a hand on a loom, a petal in a garland, a breath among many. The festival has always been this way. It does not need perfection, it needs presence, and you have given it that. The singing does not end. It doesn't rise to a peak or fall into a final note. It simply shifts. It weaves through the square like a ribbon caught on the breeze, moving from mouth to mouth, rising and thinning, deepening and cracking, until it becomes something closer to air than melody. You hum along now without even thinking, your voice low and uncertain, not because you're shy, but because this isn't about volume. It's about joining. Around you, others do the same. Some only move their lips, others hum without voice. But all of it counts. Even the silence counts. The way people lean in, the way eyes soften, the way fingers rest against forearms or shoulders for comfort, for stillness, for shared warmth. These are not gestures for display. These are the quiet languages that bloom only when the world slows down enough to notice itself. The priest kneels now at the centre of the square, the ashes from his bowl forming a faint trail across the stone. His robe pools around him like spilled cloth, and for a long moment, he simply presses his palm to the ground. Not for show, not for words, just to feel it, to place skin on stone, warmth on the bones of the city. You mirror him without realizing. Your own hand finds the earth, and the moment your fingers meet the stone, you feel something move deep inside your chest. It isn't dramatic, it isn't loud, but it is real. A shift, like the settling of dust on an altar, like a memory you never knew you had finally finding its way home. A murmur moves through the crowd, not spoken but shared, like breath passed between lungs. The dancers begin again, this time slower, less structured, more like leaves being stirred by wind. Their movements drift across the square, one leading into another, not in a pattern, but in something older than choreography. Each dancer becomes a ripple, a flicker of spirit made visible, and among them are elders, men with backs curved from years of carrying firewood, women whose knees bend slow with effort but still do, still sway, still offer. No one tells them to step back. They are not relics, they are roots, and the dance grows stronger for their presence. Someone lays a hand-woven mat near the square's edge. On it sits a wide basket filled with tamales wrapped in green husks, still warm. Another mat appears beside it with clay cups and a gourd pitcher filled with a drink dark and sweet, the kind made with roasted cacao and a pinch of spice that hums gently on the tongue. No one makes an announcement, but people rise in ones and twos to share what they've brought. A small bowl of salted seeds, a strip of dried fruit wrapped in leaves, even a piece of honeycomb passed from child to child, fingers sticky and grinning. You are handed something, a tamale, warm and fragrant, its steam curling around your wrist like a slow blessing. You unwrap it carefully, peeling the husk back with the quiet attention of someone performing a small sacred task. The first bite is soft and earthy, flavoured with chili and crushed squash seeds. You chew slowly, letting the taste unfold, letting the food become part of the memory. Around you, people are eating and talking now. Not loudly, but with the ease of those who have shared many meals before and know they will share many again. This too is ritual, the passing of food from hand to hand, the way someone wipes their fingers on the edge of their cloak before offering the last piece to a child. The way no one leaves hungry, not today. The sun stands directly above the temple now, his light falling straight down, shadowless for a moment. The heat is no longer a whisper. It presses gently against your back, soaking through the cloth of your tunic, wrapping around your shoulders like a cloak warmed by the day itself. But no one seeks shade. Not yet. Not while the music still plays. Not while the circle still moves. The priest has stepped back again. The dancers continue. And you, full of food and sound and sunlight, feel as if the edge between yourself and the city has disappeared completely. You lean back on your hands, the stone firm and hot beneath your palms. Your eyes half close, not out of weariness, but to better hear. The chants, the drum beats, the flutter of feathers, the clatter of anklets, the low hum of stories shared just under the surface of laughter. All of it flows together now, a single body made of many hearts. And in this moment you are no longer separate. You are a note in the chant, a step in the dance, a breath in the shared scene. By the time the last tamale has been passed and the final drops of cacao have been shared from gourd to gourd, the air has thickened with heat and sound. The sun rests heavy overhead, casting its golden gaze over the temple walls and the crowd below, wrapping everything in a gentle haze. It's not the kind of heat that bites or burns. It clings instead, like a second skin, warmed by smoke and stories. The square shimmers slightly, not from exhaustion, but from the slow boiling of time itself. There are no clocks here, only shadows and sound, and both now move with the laziness of contentment. You've shifted your seat just slightly, tucking your legs beneath you on the stone and laying your hands in your lap. Around you, the dancers have slowed. Their motions now are like drifting leaves in a pool, lazy spirals and sways, movement shaped more by feeling than form. The shells at their ankles barely clink anymore. They rustle, like husks in a breeze. A few have removed their feathered headpieces, placing them gently on mats at the edge of the dance space, their foreheads damp with sweat, but their expressions calm, peaceful as if they are returning from somewhere far but familiar. Not everyone is still. Children have begun to play in the shade, running between pillars, chasing one another with shrieks that blend into the music without disrupting it. They carry sticks wrapped with cloth to mimic banners, and their small feet leave trails of dust across the smooth stone. One slips and falls, but rises laughing, his knee scraped but not bloodied. An older woman nearby tears a strip from the edge of her shawl and ties it around his leg with the same care she might give to a sacred statue. No one thanks her. No one needs to. It's the rhythm of the day, the giving, the noticing, the way one body holds space for another without asking for notice. The priest has returned to the steps, now flanked by two younger apprentices, both marked in less elaborate paints but moving with the same deliberate grace. One carries a shallow bowl filled with flower petals. The other holds a clay rattle painted with the curling designs of rain and maize. They begin a chant now, a new one, higher in pitch, lighter in tone, the kind of song that doesn't settle in your chest but flutters at your temples, like the feeling of cool water touched to the back of your neck on a hot day. The crowd hums again, not to match the chant but to support it, like a blanket laid gently beneath a sleeping child. You close your eyes for just a moment, and in that moment the sound becomes the only thing, not sharp, not demanding, but steady and soft, like waves curling on the edge of a lake. You are not alone in this quiet. All around you people rest in their own ways. Heads leaned on shoulders, fingers trailing across knees, arms wrapped loosely around bundles of offerings. The city seems to breathe in and out with each chant. The lines between temple and square, between ritual and rest, blur completely. When you open your eyes again, the square has taken on a different texture. Not a transformation exactly, but a deepening. The colour of the stone seems richer, the air heavier with perfume from crushed petals and sun-warmed skin. The crowd has shifted too. Some are standing now, arms raised to the sky, not in supplication but in welcome. Others sit with their backs pressed against the low temple wall, eyes closed, faces tilted toward the sun. Even the dancers have become still, their arms lowered, their heads bowed, not in fatigue, but in gratitude. Someone beside you offers a piece of roasted squash split down the middle and dusted with chili. You take it without speaking, chew slowly, and let the sweetness melt against the back of your tongue. You don't think of the field it came from or the hand that pulled it from the fire. You just taste it, fully, completely. And somehow in that bite, you taste the whole day. The morning smoke, the laughter of children, the steady beat of the drum, the murmur of song and spirit, the quiet presence of a city that knows itself not by war or empire, but by the softness of shared ritual. Nothing grand has happened, no grand procession, no sky-splitting miracle. Just time, held, not rushed, not broken, but shaped by breath, by food, by silence and song, and the nearness of others who do not need to speak to be with you. The square is not just a place anymore. It has become a heart, and you are inside it. The sun has passed its highest point now, and with it, the hum of activity has softened into something gentler. The square no longer feels like a stage, but like a cradle. People shift into pools of shade that gather along the temple walls and beneath the cloth banners stretched between poles. The wind returns in occasional gusts, bringing with it the smell of lake water and dried flowers like nature itself is exhaling. There's no urgency in the air. No one watches the sky to see how long is left. Time here is not a thing to measure. It is something to be walked through, slowly barefoot with your arms open. You've moved again, not far, just a few steps into a shaded alcove beside an elder woman who sits weaving small cords from twisted maguey fibre. Her fingers are slow but sure, and every now and then she hums under her breath. Not a song of celebration, but one of rhythm. The kind of tune people sing to themselves while doing tasks passed down from people whose names are no longer spoken aloud. She doesn't look up when you settle beside her. She doesn't need to. Your presence has already been folded into hers, like two threads being spun from the same spindle. The drums have stopped now, not in silence, but in rest. Even sound needs to breathe. What remains are the softer noises, the scratch of weaving reeds, the shuffling of mats being rearranged, a baby somewhere nearby suckling quietly. The gentle rise and fall of dozens of conversations spoken not to be overheard, but simply to keep connection alive. Laughter, when it comes, is hushed and real, the kind that curls in the throat like warm soup. A man passes by offering small clay jars filled with tamarind pulp. He doesn't call out. He doesn't need to. People reach for the jars with a kind of unspoken agreement, slipping him tokens of exchange that aren't always coin. Some give dried herbs, others small beads or scraps of dyed thread. You trade a pouch of salted maize and take one of the jars in return. The taste is sweet and tangy, the pulp soft, the spice catching you gently at the edge of your tongue. You savour it in small licks, letting the flavour stay on your lips. No one is rushing the food now. This is not a meal. This is a continuation of presence. Children nap in the laps of parents and neighbours alike. Banners flutter with a sound like pages turning. A young boy balances a dried gourd on his head and walks the length of the square, his face fixed in concentration while a few women laugh behind their palms. Not to mock him, but to protect his pride in case he stumbles. He does eventually, the gourd rolling free and tapping lightly against a stone. But he just laughs and runs after it, arms swinging. You lie back on your mat for a while, your head cushioned by a folded shawl. The sky looks different from here, stretched wide across the tops of temples and trees. The blue is so pale it could almost be white. A few birds circle far above, their wings catching the light in flashes. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the square and its warmth, beyond the edge of this slow and sacred moment, the rest of the city goes on, but it feels quieter now, as if even the streets and canals are holding their breath, waiting to see what the afternoon might bring. Someone sits beside you, their shadow falling across your legs. It's a boy, maybe 10 or so, 11, one of your neighbour's sons. He doesn't speak, just offers a carved flute, the kind made from bone or cane. You take it gently, examining the smoothness of it, the spiral designs etched along its side, the way it fits perfectly in your hands. He waits patiently. You bring it to your lips and blow softly. The sound unsure at first, like a reed shaking in the wind. But you try again, and the third time a note comes out clear and sweet, like a drop of honey falling into a clay cup. The boy nods, pleased, then lies back beside you and closes his eyes. In the stillness that follows, you play another note, then another. The sound is small, and yet it carries. A few people turn their heads. not with surprise but with recognition. Music is not something to perform here. It is something to share like food, like shade, like silence. You don't play a full tune, just sounds, just breath through bone, a way of speaking without language, and all around you the square listens, not with ears, but with its very walls. The festival continues, but not in noise, not in parade. It continues in breath and presence and the weight of a flute resting in the hands of someone who has never played one before. You smile, not broadly but inwardly, because this too is ritual. The sound, the pause, the soft warmth of another day carrying you forward. The sky begins its slow drift towards dusk. You don't notice it right away, not through any sudden darkening or chill, but through the subtle tilt in shadows and the way the light now falls in slants rather than floods. It pools in corners, brushes the tops of heads, lingers longer on the temple's edge. The square begins to shift with it, not ending, not breaking apart, but softening, like a fire allowed to settle into embers. Even the breeze has changed, bringing with it the scent of damp stone and far-off wood smoke. It feels almost like the air is thick with remembering. You're still lying on your mat, the boy beside you having dozed off not long after handing you the flute. You've stopped playing now, though the memory of those few uncertain notes seems to hang in the space around you, gently refusing to vanish. You turn the flute over in your hands, tracing the carvings again with your thumb. There's a smoothness to the bone worn by time and touch, and you wonder how many hands have held it before yours. Not just this boy's, but perhaps his father's, maybe even a grandparent's. Tools here are not things, they are threads. They carry songs even when no one plays them. Around you, the square has quieted further. A few people move slowly now, gathering mats, refolding shawls, gently rousing children with strokes to the back or whispers to the ear. But many remain just as they are, unwilling yet to leave the warmth of the moment. It's not laziness, it's reverence. It's the understanding that something should not be rushed. The festival has not ended, it has simply turned its face toward Keys. Evening. Near the far end of the square, a group of older men begin laying out small ceramic bowls in a circle. The bowls are filled with different items, seeds, bits of stone, folded leaves, and something white that glints faintly in the softening light. Shells, perhaps. They arrange them with a care that feels almost like meditation. One of the men begins to hum, a low, steady sound from deep in his chest. He hums not for performance, but because the act of placing each item seems to ask for sound. Another joins him, then another. The song they create is not tuneful in any traditional way. It wavers and groans, rises and dips, but it wraps around the square like a shawl, and people turn toward it without thinking. You sit up slowly, brushing the dust from your skirts. The boy stirs beside you and blinks at the fading sky, then sits cross-legged without a word. Together, you watch the slow unfolding of this new ritual. A woman near the edge of the bowl, circle, begins to speak. Her voice is low, worn but steady. She doesn't shout, doesn't project. She speaks like someone telling a story meant only for the ground and the wind. You don't catch all the words. Her dialect is older, rounder, full of sounds you don't hear much anymore. But the rhythm of it is clear. She is naming things, not things in the way a child learns them, but in the way someone might speak to what has been lost. Names of rivers, names of birds, names of people long past. Each name is a step laid into the memory of the day. As she speaks, those gathered begin to offer their own names too. Quietly, just one word or two. No explanations. Just a name, placed into the bowl of sound like a petal dropped into water. You feel your own lips move before you know what you're going to say. And then you whisper the name of your grandmother. Not because she taught you how to celebrate, but because she showed you how to listen, how to be still, how to hold your place in the circle without needing to shine. The boy whispers a name too. You don't ask whose. You just nod. It's enough. A soft hand rests on your shoulder for a moment. You turn slightly to see the old woman from earlier, the one who had been weaving cord. She doesn't speak, but her eyes carry that same weight of memory, that quiet power of being fully present. She squeezes your shoulder once, then moves on, collecting a few of the spent tamale husks as she goes. Even cleaning is ritual now. Even sweeping is part of the prayer. You look around and realise that although the square is quieter, the sense of unity has deepened. People speak more now, but in the same way stars speak. Quiet sparks of presence scattered across the sky. You hear murmurs of gratitude, soft laughter, even a song being sung by a pair of girls plucking seeds from a dried flower head. The air smells of cooling stone and ground spices, and somewhere in the distance a dog barks once, then falls silent again. Evening is almost here, but the heart of the day remains, not in spectacle, but in the traces it has left behind, in footprints, in whispers, in the way a square once filled with sound now hums with memory. The warmth of the stone beneath you has begun to fade, not in any sudden way, but like a memory drifting into the background. It still lingers if you press your hand flat, but the heat no longer reaches your spine as it did hours ago. The sky has taken on the colour of old copper, streaked with thin clouds that glow briefly before vanishing into soft purples and greys. Around you the square has begun to settle. There are still voices, still footsteps, still the soft scrape of mats being rolled and baskets being gathered. But everything feels slower now. Even the air seems to have thickened with reflection, the way a pot of stew thickens on a low flame, taking its time to hold all the flavours of the day. You sit with your knees drawn to your chest, arms wrapped around them, the flute resting in the fold beside you. The boy has gone, called away by his mother, who gave you a small smile as they left. She didn't say anything, just touched her fingers to her lips and then to her child's back, as if offering thanks for time well shared. You nodded in return. That's all that was needed. There are some exchanges that don't require language, and today has been filled with them. A few of the dancers have returned to the centre of the square, not in formation, not in costume, just as themselves. Some carry small rattles, others hold bundles of leaves, still green and fragrant. They begin to move again, not in performance but in offering. Their feet barely lift from the ground, their motion slow and sweeping like wind brushing across sand. One of them begins to sing, her voice trembling slightly but strong, and the others follow, not in harmony, but in togetherness. The sound they create is not for an audience. It is a release, a way to carry the weight of the day into the hands of the night. Someone near you begins to gather the last of the food vessels. You rise to help without being asked, taking an empty cup, a folded cloth, a bowl still shimmered with the sweetness of tamarind. The work is slow, not burdensome, and even in the cleaning there is a sense of grace. Each item returned, each scrap collected, is a way of honouring what was given. This too is part of the celebration. The part that comes after the music, after the movement, when the real memory is made. Not in noise, but in care. Once the square has been mostly cleared, the temple priests begin their final act of the day. They do not call attention to themselves. There is no announcement, no dramatic pause. They simply appear again at the top of the steps, one of them carrying a small bundle wrapped in red cloth. He unwraps it carefully, revealing what looks like maize, bound with coloured string and pressed with symbols. He raises it to the sky, not high, just enough that the last rays of sunlight catch. Then he kneels and places it gently on the stone where it remains, a quiet gift to whatever is watching. You feel something stir inside you then, not a thought exactly, but a warmth, a knowing that what you have just witnessed is not a story you were told, it is one you are part of, the kind of story that will return to you in dreams and in odd quiet moments, while washing maize or mending a tear in a tunic, and you won't be able to say what it means exactly, only that it matters. The people begin to leave in twos and threes, not hurried, not delayed. They move like people who have given and received in equal measure. You follow at your own pace, stepping over the same stones you crossed that morning, but somehow they feel different under your feet now, as if the day has made the ground softer, more forgiving. The streets are quieter as you make your way home. The garlands of marigolds still hang from doorways, though a few petals have fallen, scattered by feet and wind. You gather one as you pass, pressing it between your palms for no reason other than it feels like something worth keeping. The smoke of cooking fires begins to rise again, this time with the aroma of evening meals. The sound of laughter filters through walls, not the loud laughter of midday games, but the quiet kind shared over simple food and tired bodies. The kind that says, "Yes, we live this day well." Your house comes into view, its small doorway glowing with the last of the sun. You pause before entering, turning to look once more at the sky, now streaked with the first brush of stars. Somewhere behind you, the last notes of a flute are playing. Not yours, but someone else's. And you smile because it means the story continues. It always does. You step through your doorway without a word. The light inside your small home is dim now, kissed only by the soft flicker of a taper flame that leans and sways, with the wind sneaking through the reed-lined roof. The scent of burned copal still lingers faintly in the air, curling around the edges of the clay walls and settling like a memory into the woven mat beneath your feet. You do not speak. You do not need to. The quiet has already welcomed you home. You close the door softly, not with force, but with the care one gives to something sacred. The house is unchanged since you left it this morning, and yet it feels entirely different now. There's a hum in the silence, as if the walls themselves carry the pulse of the day. You move slowly, placing the petal you carried from the square onto the small altar near the hearth. It curls there, resting next to the clay figure your mother once held in her palms so often that the face has been worn nearly smooth. You don't offer a prayer, not with words. Instead, you let your hands linger over the petal, your fingers just brushing the stone base, and in that touch is everything you cannot say. Gratitude, weariness, fulfillment, all folded into the gesture of a hand remembering its place. You light a small fire in the hearth, not for cooking, not for warmth, but for presence. The glow rises slow, catching on the charred ends of yesterday's wood, and for a while you simply watch it. The flames do not dance tonight. They sway, they breathe. You breathe with them, deep and even, the rhythm of the day still threaded through your ribs. Your body is tired, but not in the way that aches. It's the kind of tired that comes from being full, from having stepped fully into a moment and letting it shape you without resistance. You prepare a bit of food, though hunger is not what moves you. Just a small bowl of maize, softened and stirred with a hint of cocoa. Something light, something warm. You eat it slowly, sitting on the floor with your back against the wall, your legs stretched before you. The sound of the spoon against the clay bowl is the only sound in the room, and it carries strangely, as if the house itself is listening. Maybe it is. Maybe these walls have heard every laugh, every whisper, every story told and forgotten within their embrace. And tonight, they hear the silence and know it means peace. Outside, the city has begun to slip fully into night. You can hear it through the gaps in the roof, the softened calls of neighbours bidding one another good rest, the creak of doors settling shut, the distant trill of insects singing their nightly songs. The sky outside must be deepening now, dotted with stars whose names you once learned sitting on your father's lap, pointing upward and asking what each one meant. You try to remember those names now, mouthing them one by one, letting them fall into the room like seeds onto tilled soil. Some come back easily, others elude you, but it doesn't matter. Even forgotten names hold weight when spoken with love. You lie down on your mat, the fibres still faintly warm from the day's sun that streamed through the roof earlier. You draw your shawl around your shoulders, tucking it beneath your chin, the way your mother used to do when you were small. Your eyes begin to close slowly. The lid's heavy, not with sleep alone, but with everything the day has given. As you drift, your mind touches moments like beads on a string. The dancers moving like leaves, the chant that threaded its way into your breath, the boy who shared his flute, the silence that was never empty, only full of meaning too soft for words. You are not alone in this stillness. All across the city, others lie as you do, wrapped in quiet and memory. Some murmur prayers, some do not, some dream of the music, others of the food, but all of them carry the shape of the day with them into sleep. The festival is not over. It never is. It lingers in the soot on fingers, in the scent of ash in the hair, in the way your chest rises and falls without effort, still echoing the rhythm of that first morning drum. The fire beside you sighs, curling into a smaller flame. You do not open your eyes to watch it fade. You don't need to. You are already somewhere deeper, somewhere older, where rituals are not remembered but lived, not performed but felt. And in that place, you sleep. The darkness has deepened, pressed close against your little house, blanketing the stone walls in quiet. Outside, the world speaks only in hushes now. A distant splash from the lake, perhaps a bird shifting in its sleep, and the occasional whisper of the wind curling between rooftops. Inside, everything is still. You are lying on your mat with the shawl drawn high over your shoulders, but your sleep has not yet fully claimed you. It brushes against your eyelids like a soft hand, waiting. You're in that in-between space where thought drifts without anchor, and the past comes uninvited, not in memories but in feelings that arrive without names. The flame in the hearth has dwindled into a red glow, casting just enough warmth to keep the night from creeping too close. Its faint light paints long shadows across the wall, shapes that ripple gently with every movement of the fire's breath. You watch them with half-closed eyes, not focusing on their form but on the way they sway. It feels like a language, one not spoken but felt through the skin, the kind of language that lingers in the space between waking and sleep, the place where dreams start to pull you in by the edges. You think of the square again, not in detail but as a feeling, the weight of the stone beneath you, the way the flute had trembled in your hand before you played, the quiet certainty in the old woman's touch on your shoulder. These are not events, they are textures now. They float across your chest and settle beneath your ribs, becoming part of you in a way that cannot be pulled apart. The festival was never just a gathering. It was a weaving, and you were one of its threads. You still are. A faint breeze slips through the roof again, lifting a corner of the shawl from your cheek. It smells of the lake, wet reeds and deep, cool water, and something more delicate. Crushed marigold petals, perhaps, still lingering in the city's breath. You pull the shawl closer and turn onto your side. The movement is slow, almost drowsy, and the mat creaks gently beneath you. It sounds like a whisper from the earth, telling you to rest. You listen. Behind your closed eyes, images begin to rise, not sharp like daytime thoughts, but soft and shifting like smoke. You see the temple steps lit with late sun, the hands placing bowls into a circle, the boy's proud smile as he handed you the flute. You hear the chant again, not in sound but in sensation, as if your own breath has become its echo. It moves with you, guides your dreaming body through remembered places that are no longer bound by the hours that came before. In your dream you are walking along the edge of the lake. The sky is filled with soft pinks and blues, the water still and perfect, reflecting the city like a second world turned upside down. You carry something in your hands. It feels light but important. You don't look down to see what it is, you just know that it matters, that it was given to you, and now it is yours to carry. Along the shore, other figures move, some you recognize, some you do not. But none speak. They simply walk, together, each one cradling their own small something. The sound of their footsteps is softer than breath. You wake just a little, enough to feel your own weight on the mat again, to hear the faint groan of the reed roof above as it shifts against the wind. The warmth of the fire is nearly gone now. Only the quiet pulse of embers remains, but it's enough. You breathe deeply and let the air settle in your chest. There's no rush to return to full waking. The night still holds you, and sleep is not finished yet. For a long while you lie there in stillness, not asleep, not awake, feeling your heartbeat slow and your thoughts drift like feathers. The memory of the festival wraps around you, not as an event, but as something alive, something that continues in the rhythm of your body, in the air that now smells faintly of ash and blossoms, in the knowledge that today was not something you observed, but something you became. The shawl shifts again, now from your own breath, rising and falling, steady and calm. You are wrapped in the softness of the night, in the safety of walls that have seen this ritual of rest for generations. Outside, the stars press closer to the earth, blinking gently as if to watch over the city below. You don't open your eyes again. There is nothing more to see. Everything that matters is already within you. Night has become thick and complete, its weight pressing gently against the roof of your home and filling the corners with shadows so soft they seem to move when you aren't looking. You sleep lightly now, drifting between layers, not quite tethered to one place or another. Each breath comes slowly, unhurried, like waves reaching the shore long after the tide has turned. The air inside is cool but not cold. The fire has given up its last flickers and now glows only in memory, yet its warmth still clings to the room like a spirit that hasn't quite finished its visit. Outside, the city has quieted into something deeper than cognates. This isn't emptiness, it's fullness turned inward. In the space between dreams, you hear the faint rustle of leaves, though there are no trees close enough to make such a sound. Perhaps it is just the sound of sleep itself, brushing gently past your ears like the hem of a priest's robe trailing over stone. Or perhaps it is the sound of those who walked the festival long before you, whose memories have soaked into the walls and stones, still wandering quietly through the places they once knew. These thoughts don't trouble you. They comfort you. The idea that something ancient and kind might sit beside you as you sleep is not frightening. It is familiar. Your body remains still, but your mind stirs gently. You find yourself walking again, not through the city this time, but through a place made entirely of light and shadow. Dream version of Tenochtitlan, where canals shine like polished obsidian and the stars above seem so close you could dip your fingers into them. The streets are lined with marigold petals, not fallen, but floating mid-air, as if the world itself has stopped just long enough for you to admire the beauty of what has been. And in this dream place, the air carries the scent of smoked cacao and warm maize, as though the feast is still being prepared somewhere just out of sight. You walk with bare feet along the edge of a canal, the stone cool beneath your soles, and feel no fear, only wonder. The city hums, not with noise, but with presence. Every corner, every doorway, every reed-roofed home carries a kind of music beneath it, the leftover rhythm of the day now made softer by night. You pause beside a small garden, where flowering herbs breathe their perfumes into the wind. Someone once knelt here to tend them. You feel their care still in the way the soil is turned, in the way the leaves grow without crowding one another. Even in dreams there are signs of love. Somewhere ahead, a flute plays, the same thin, reedy notes you once played yourself, but now they come clearer, fuller. You follow the sound without urgency, your steps guided not by need, but by the way the melody tugs gently at your chest. You pass through an arch made of woven branches, through a curtain of hanging beads that clink softly as you brush them aside. On the other side there is no festival square, no grand ceremony, just a fire, small and steady, and a few mats placed around it in a circle. Sitting there are faces you know and don't know. The old woman who touched your shoulder, the boy who gave you the flute, others older still whose eyes carry the deep silence of those who have seen many sunrises. They do not speak to you, they simply nod, as if your arrival was expected, as if they have been waiting all this time not for you, but with you. You sit. The mat beneath you feels warm. The fire crackles in that lazy, slow rhythm of real sleep. No one moves quickly here. The world turns with grace. You close your dream eyes and let yourself drift even further. There is no past or future now. Only breath. Only the knowledge that something sacred passed through you today and left you softer than before. You carry the weight of it not on your shoulders, but in your heart, where it sits quietly like a stone warmed by sun, asking for nothing, offering everything. And as you sleep truly now, fully and deeply, the city holds you. It cradles you in stillness, in memory, in the knowledge that rituals are not made from spectacle. They are made from the way we listen, the way we touch, the way we stay. Somewhere another drum may begin again tomorrow, but for now the rhythm is rest. Somewhere in the night a breeze moves slowly through the reeds that fringe the rooftops, lifting the smallest of sounds into the air. Not loud, not startling, just the creak of woven wood and the sigh of woven cloth. These are the sounds of a sleeping city that remembers how to breathe in rhythm with the earth. You're still lying on your mat, eyes closed, body folded into the soft blanket of sleep. But something deeper has stirred within you. A turning, quiet and slow, like coals shifting beneath ashes. Not enough to wake you fully, but enough to press against the edge of your dreams and leave a mark. The space around you feels softer than before, as though the walls of your home have leaned inward slightly, embracing the hush you've carried in from the day. You shift in your sleep, your breath catching for a moment before returning to its slow, steady rhythm. Outside, the stars wheel in silence, their movements unseen but felt in the bones of the old stones, the same stones walked by your ancestors and warmed by the same fires that now sleep in your hearth. Time is not a straight path here. It moves in circles, spirals, gentle folds that carry yesterday forward without losing it. In your dream, the circle from the festival square appears again. This time it is not made of dancers or drums, but of lights. Tiny, floating embers, each one pulsing like a heartbeat, arranged in perfect silence across the ground. You step among them barefoot, feeling no fear, only the faint warmth that rises from each glowing dot. They light your way but do not burn. They guide you, but do not speak. Ahead, the outline of a house forms, familiar in shape but softened by the strangeness of dream. Its walls are made of memory and clay, its roof is stitched from stories, and in the doorway stands a figure, backlit by the glow of an unseen fire. You approach slowly, as if moving through water. The figure does not speak, but you know them. Not by name, not by face, but by the quiet in your chest when you look at them. They hold something in their hands, something wrapped in a cloth the colour of dusk. They offer it to you with a nod, and as you reach out, your fingers brush theirs for just a second. The cloth warms in your palm, and you press it gently to your chest without unwrapping it. You don't need to see what's inside. What matters is that it has been given. Then the fire behind the figure flares once, sending up a whisper of smoke that curls through the air like a song, and the house fades. The dream shifts again. Now you're back in the square, but it's empty. Not abandoned, just resting. The stones are cool beneath your feet. The sky above is a deep indigo, dotted with constellations you once knew the names of. You sit on the edge of the fountain, hands resting in your lap, the cloth bundle still against your heart. You feel no urgency, no need to move or speak, the silence is enough. In the real world, your body turns slightly beneath the shawl, adjusting to some unseen need. Your breath remains steady. Your fingers twitch once, perhaps in memory of the cloth you held in your dream, or perhaps in answer to something more ancient. The fire in the hearth is no longer glowing, but the stones remember its warmth. The room is cool, but not cold. A balance has been struck between what has been given and what has been received. Outside, dawn still waits on the horizon. The sky is dark, but not heavy. There is a sense of something beginning to stretch in the distance, the slow uncoiling of light behind the mountains. But the city is not yet ready to wake. The night has more to give, more to hold. You remain in sleep, body slack, face relaxed, wrapped in the invisible threads of the day before. The flute song, the chant, the flower you placed on the altar, they all remain within you, turning slowly like small suns beneath your skin. You are not alone in this kind of sleep. All across the city, others dream beside you. Some in silence, some with murmured words, others holding on to the edges of dreams they won't remember, but will carry all the same. This is the after of the festival. Not the ending, but the deep breath between the chapters. A time when nothing moves, yet everything shifts. The deep night holds steady, cradling the city in its palms like a sacred bowl. The stars hang above in quiet agreement, watching the sleeping earth without judgment or need. Nothing stirs now but the breath of the wind across rooftops and the soft rustle of dreams turning slowly under shawls. It is a holy hour, though no priest will ever declare it. The kind of hour when even the moon seems to tiptoe, casting silver only where it is most welcome. In this hour you sleep deeply, tucked into the warmth left behind by fire and memory. The mat beneath you carries not just your weight, but the weight of a day that asked for everything quietly and gave more in return. There is no urgency in your breath, no struggle in your limbs. Only the calm that follows a long walk home, the kind that sinks into muscle and bone like water into thirsty soil. Your dreams float now, not as stories, but as sensations, warmth on your shoulders, drumming felt in the soles of your feet, the sound of someone laughing just behind you, the scent of something cooking, something simple and real. You're not building scenes anymore. You're walking through echoes, and they welcome you like kin. In one of these drifting dream spaces, you find yourself standing beside a fire once again, though you're unsure if it's the same one as before. The figures around it are blurred at the edges, like paintings left too long in the rain, but you know they are familiar. They do not need names. They do not speak. You feel their presence as you might feel the weight of a stone in your pocket, not heavy but known. One of them offers you a bundle of thread, long and red and strong. You take it, and without being told, you begin to weave. Not fabric, not rope, just motion. The looping and knotting of something essential, something felt. The thread moves between your fingers with surprising ease. Each twist pulls something from within you, an image, a sound, a piece of the day now long gone. The boy's flute, the slow chant that rose from the temple steps, the look your mother once gave you when you learned to grind maize without spilling a kernel. You don't choose what to weave, the thread chooses, you only follow. And as the weaving continues, the thread changes colour, sometimes gold, sometimes blue, sometimes as pale as morning mist. But it never breaks, it never tangles. It just continues, patient and infinite. You feel yourself smile in sleep, not because of joy or sadness, but because some part of you understands this weaving as the real ritual. The festival was the music, the offering, the meal, but this act of remembering and winding memory into something that lasts, is the meaning beneath it all. It is what keeps one day connected to the next, what allows the stories of your people to survive without ink, without parchment, just through breath and hands and time. You are part of that thread now, a single length in a weaving that began before temples were raised and will continue long after the last drum has quieted. Outside your home, a soft sound brushes against the quiet, perhaps a distant canoe gliding over water, or a nightbird calling once before going still again. The city does not wake. It only shifts slightly in its sleep, like a giant beast nestling deeper into its dreams. Somewhere another fire burns low, another sleeper turns and sighs. The clay walls of 100 homes breathe in unison. There is nothing else to do, nothing else to chase. You drift again, deeper, the dream fading like fog beneath morning light. But the warmth of it stays. The thread remains in your hands, even though they now lie still atop your chest. You hold it gently, protectively, as though it were the last warm thing left in the world. And in a way it is. For now. Until the next festival. Until the next gathering of feet and voice and song. Until the next chance to remember together. And so the city sleeps. But never forgets. The ritual breathes on, carried not by words or rites, but by the soft pull of a thread in the hands of someone who still dreams. The sky outside your home is beginning to lift ever so slightly, the black softening at its edges into something closer to blue, though no sun has risen yet. There is a tenderness in this hour, one that slips into the room like a careful hand pulling back a blanket. You are still asleep, wrapped in your shawl, breath deep and even, but your body has begun to feel the change. Not enough to wake, not quite, just enough to shift ever so slightly on the mat, to stretch one leg, to loosen the fingers that still curl loosely over the thread from your dream. The thread is not real, or perhaps it is more real than the clay floor beneath you. Either way, you feel its weight, light as a whisper but certain, and your chest rises and falls in rhythm with its memory. Outside, the wind has calmed. It no longer tugs at the rooftops or stirs the petals fallen in the street. Instead, it passes like breath through reed and branch, gentle and thin, as if it too is waiting for the light to rise. The city of Tenochtitlan lies still beneath this sky, each canal dark and mirror smooth, each stone quiet in its place. Even the birds, who often chatter long before the sun, have hushed themselves for a little longer. This pause is a kind of magic. It happens every morning, but no two are the same. This one is marked by the afterglow of celebration, by the still simmering peace that follows a day of meaning. And perhaps that is why even the birds hesitate, sensing the sacred weight of what was shared. Inside, your sleep begins to lift, slowly, kindly, like a curtain rising not for a performance, but for sunlight. Your eyelids flutter once, then settle. You are not quite ready. You drift for a few more heartbeats, sinking one last time into the warmth of your mat, the smell of your own skin after a day in the square, the distant trace of maize and ash still clinging to your hair. You feel the walls around you before you open your eyes. You know their curves, their little cracks, the way the corners of the room hold silence like a bowl holds water. This is the home you return to each night, but this morning it feels gently changed, as though it, too, had been part of the ritual and carries a piece of it still. When you finally open your eyes, the light is pale and thin, spilling across the floor in slanted stripes, glows gently against the clay, and dances faintly on the ashes in the hearth. You do not sit up right away. Instead, you watch it, the way it moves and settles, and let yourself feel its welcome. The city is not loud yet. You can hear a few small stirrings, someone lifting a pot, the shuffle of a mat being shaken out, the soft murmur of voices still low from sleep. But no drums, no chant, not yet. The festival is over, but not gone. It rests now in this light, in the quiet presence of people who remember, even if only in their bones. You rise slowly, stretching each limb with the care of someone who knows there is no need to rush. Your legs are sore in a good way, the way they are after walking for hours, after dancing, after kneeling to sweep or stir or pray. You take a small cloth and wipe your face, then move toward the hearth. The coals are cool now, but you place a bit of wood on them anyway, just enough to catch if the warmth still lingers. You do not need fire yet. It is only the gesture that matters, the offering, the remembering. You kneel beside your altar, touching the petal you placed there the day before. It has dried slightly, curling at the edges, but its colour remains strong. You close your eyes and say nothing, letting the stillness of the morning settle into your chest. In that silence you feel the city waking around you, not all at once, but gently. The footsteps outside are still few. The sky has lightened just a little more, and in the far distance, perhaps near the temple, A flute plays again, just a note or two, testing the morning. You do not know who plays it, but that doesn't matter. The song is for everyone, for those who danced and those who watched, for the old who remembered and the young who are just beginning to understand. It's not the same flute as before, but it carries the same feeling. It is a bridge, a thread, one that loops back to yesterday and forward into the next day and the next, tying each to the other until nothing is lost. And so you sit there, not fully returned to the ordinary, but not far from it either. You're somewhere in between, where memory rests gently on the present. And in that space the festival continues, not in noise or spectacle, but in breath and light and the quiet wonder of beginning again. The first real sounds of morning begin not with drums or voices, but with water. Somewhere just beyond your home, you hear the slow rhythm of someone pouring from one clay vessel to another, the liquid splashing softly, then settling. It is a sound that belongs to the start of things. Water for boiling maize, for washing the sleep from one's face, for feeding the thirsty soil just outside the doorway. It reminds you that while the festival may have been wrapped in song and motion, today is the kind of day that begins with small, careful rituals. The world does not rush back to its duties. It leans into them slowly, stretching, testing the edges of the new day before stepping into it fully. You press your hands to the floor and rise from your mat. The stiffness in your back tells you that the square's stone surface left more of an imprint than you thought, but it is the sort of ache you wear like a badge, a whisper of the life that filled your body the day before. You fold your shawl neatly and place it on the small bench against the wall. Your hands move without instruction. They know this pattern well. In every crease and motion is a memory of your mother's hands, and hers before her, smoothing cloth and sweeping corners and preparing for the day without ever speaking of what they were doing. There is a language in these gestures that cannot be taught, only inherited. Outside, the light is gold now, soft and full, the kind of light that reveals things kindly, allowing rough stone and faded paint to carry a certain quiet beauty. You step into it, blinking once as the warmth touches your skin. The street outside your home is not busy yet. A few neighbours are visible, bent over their own small tasks. A boy walks past with a basket of herbs. An old man ties reeds into bundles without looking up. And across the way, a woman sprinkles water at the base of a flowering shrub, her movements slow and rhythmic. None of them speak, but each glance holds recognition, not just of you, but of what yesterday was. There is a shared softness between you, the kind that lingers after something sacred has been witnessed. You make your way toward the well, carrying a small jug wrapped in woven fibre to protect your fingers from the morning chill. As you walk, the air carries faint smells from nearby homes, burned wood, cooked beans, crushed leaves, simple scents, grounding ones. The kind that remind you this city, though built on water and power, is also built on repetition and care. You greet the woman at the well with a nod, and she returns it with a small smile, her eyes still rimmed with the red edges of sleep. No words pass between you, not yet. There is a reverence in this quiet, and neither of you wishes to break it before the sun has fully risen. When you return home, the jug is full and your hands are damp, and there is comfort in both. You place it near the hearth and prepare a bit of maize for breakfast. Nothing elaborate, just enough to fill the belly and welcome the day. As the pot begins to steam, you sit by the doorway and rest your back against the wall, watching the city slowly gather its breath. A child laughs in the distance, shrill and sudden. A rooster calls. A grinding stone starts its song. Life resumes, not because it must, but because it always has. As you eat, your thoughts drift once more to the square, not to the colour or sound or movement of it, but to the way your heart had felt sitting there beside the boy with the flute. The calm, the quiet assurance that even in the noise, there was something still and sacred at the centre of it all. That feeling has followed you here, into this morning, into this small moment with steam rising from your bowl and light resting on your face. And you know, in that quiet certainty that speaks not with words but with breath, that this is the other side of the ritual, not the celebration itself but what it leaves behind, the warmth, the bond, the unspoken thread now tying you to those who danced, to those who sang, to those who simply watched and carried the memory home like fire cupped between their hands. You hold it too, this morning, and though your day has begun like any other, nothing within it feels ordinary. The sun has risen fully now, casting a pale gold over the rooftops of Tenochtitlan, illuminating the quiet repairs of a city re-entering itself after the stretch and breath of celebration. Its light rolls down the sides of temples and slips between houses, glinting off clay pots and rippling faintly across the surface of the canals. Your small home feels brighter than it has in days, not because of the sunlight alone, but because the air inside carries the warmth of what came before. You have eaten, you've swept the threshold with the little reed broom your mother once used, and now you sit just outside your doorway, your arms wrapped around your knees, watching the life of the city unfold in its gentle post-festival way. People pass by in twos and threes, not hurried but not idle either. They nod when they see you, some smile, others carry baskets, tools, folded cloths for market or for trade. The sound of the grindstones has become more regular, more confident, like the heartbeat of the day finding its rhythm again. But every now and then someone pauses. You see it in the way they slow near the square, in the way their eyes glance upward toward the temple steps or drift over to a wreath of marigolds still hanging by a doorway. These are not distractions. They are acts of remembering. The city has always known how to hold memory while moving forward. It does not let go. It carries. A boy walks by balancing a clay bowl on his head. You recognize him, not by name but by the tilt of his shoulders and the way he hums under his breath. He had been near the dancers yesterday, sitting cross-legged beside a woman who might have been his grandmother, his eyes wide as he watched the shells jingle on the performers' ankles. Today he wears the same woven tunic, now slightly stained with the orange dust of flower petals. He sees you watching and smiles shyly, then disappears around the corner, his humming fading with him. You sit a little straighter after that, not because of pride, but because you feel part of something still unfolding even in this quieter hour. The memory of the festival clings to you in ways you hadn't expected. It's not loud anymore. It doesn't arrive in the sound of drums or the chants of the priests. It arrives in scent and posture and breath. You smell the faint sweetness of copal still caught in the creases of your tunic, the earthy weight of crushed cornmeal in your fingernails. You carry the rhythm of the dancers in your stride, slower today but somehow more rooted. Even the mat inside your home feels changed beneath your feet, like it holds not just your rest, but the imprint of something sacred walked across it. Later in the day, you visit the square again. You hadn't planned to, but your feet seem to know where they're going before your mind catches up. When you arrive, the space is mostly empty. A few children chase one another across the open stones, their laughter rising high before falling back into the quiet. A man sweeps the edges where flower petals have begun to wilt and stick. A woman with tired eyes sits with her back to a column, peeling tamarind pods with practiced fingers. You walk slowly through the square, your steps echoing softly, and let your eyes move over the stones. They are stained in places with the marks of food and fire, of footsteps and celebration, but they do not look ruined. They look used, marked by life. You kneel near the edge where you'd once sat with the boy who shared his flute, and run your fingers over a smooth section of stone, warm from the sun. You don't speak. There is no need. The city speaks without sound. It always has. In the way the stones remain, in the way the people return, in the way the air holds the past like a soft hush pressed against your ear. You sit there for a long time, long enough for the shadows to shift and for the sky to change from blue to a softer, lighter hue. When you rise, you feel it again, that thread, that connection between what was and what is still becoming. The festival has passed, but it has not ended. It lives now in the ordinary, in the folding of cloth, in the sound of water pouring, in the silence shared between neighbours who all walked through the same fire and came out quieter, fuller. And as you walk home, empty-handed but not empty-hearted, you know that this day, like the last, is part of the weaving. One more strand in the endless cloth of remembering. By the time you make your way back from the square, the sun has begun its slow descent, turning the light more golden with every passing moment. The city of Tenochtitlan breathes in this hour with long, measured exhales. It is not tired, not quite, but it has grown quieter, as if the stones themselves are thinking. Your feet move steadily, tracing the same familiar steps that brought you to the marketplace so many times before, and yet they feel different now. Each step presses against memory, not just of the festival, but of the lives woven around it. The boy and his flute, the woman with petals in her hair, the slow unspooling of voices that had carried prayers not just upward, but inward. You pass a small canal and pause for a moment, letting your eyes follow the water's path as it curls past homes and under wooden bridges. The surface is still today, nearly perfect in its reflection. In it, you see yourself, faint and wavering, a figure moving across the water's skin as if part of a story told not in words, but in ripples. You kneel at the edge and dip your fingers into the coolness. It slips over your skin easily, without resistance. And for a brief second you imagine every festival that came before you, every hand that touched this same water, every story that passed through this city like a low and steady drumbeat. It humbles you, in a way, not painfully, just enough to remind you that the celebration was never just yours to carry. It belonged to everyone, even those long gone, and somehow it still does. As you reach your doorway again, you hear soft laughter behind you. Turning, you see two children rolling a small hoop along the road, using sticks to keep it upright. They shout to one another in bursts of joy, their feet kicking up light dust with each run. You step aside without thinking, and one of them waves to you with the kind of open-faced joy that makes your chest feel a little lighter. You smile in return and step back into your home, the mat waiting, the hearth still holding the scent of yesterday's coals. Inside, the light has shifted again. It falls across the floor now in long slanted beams, dust catching the golden streaks like flecks of memory floating in mid-air. You settle beside the wall, your back resting against the clay, and exhale slowly. There is peace here, not in the way people often chase it, but in the way it simply arrives when you stop chasing anything at all. The festival had filled the city to the brim with movement and music and sound, but now its echo has created a stillness even more sacred. You take out the woven cloth you brought with you, the one given in offering, or perhaps just passed from one set of hands to another, like a folded piece of silence. You lay it across your knees and trace the patterns in the weave. They are simple, lines and shapes stitched with careful fingers, but the longer you look, the more you see. It is a story without beginning or end, a language that speaks not in letters but in rhythm. You run your fingers over it slowly, feeling the pulse of it, and know that someone long before you sat in a similar room, under similar light, doing the very same thing. And outside, the wind stirs once more, just slightly. It carries with it the smell of damp earth and far-off smoke, the kind that tells you someone nearby has begun preparing their evening meal. You know soon you'll do the same. There is still corn to grind, still beans to stir, still mats to be shaken and folded. But for now, you remain in this quiet, letting the weight of the day wrap around you like a shawl still warm from the sun. Evenings like this do not need words. They speak through the breath you take, through the way you look at your own hands and realize how much they've held. And as you close your eyes, just for a moment, you carry with you the knowledge that what you lived was not a single moment, not a fleeting ritual, but a thread that continues to run through everything, a quiet echo beneath each step you take, Evening slides into the city, not with suddenness, but with grace, like a cloth being drawn slowly over a sleeping child. The shadows lengthen, curling along the walls and settling into corners where they will stay until morning calls them back. You sit still by the doorway, where the air is cooler now, and your fingers still rest on the edge of the woven cloth across your knees. Its fibres have warmed under your touch, and it feels softer than it did before, though nothing has changed about it but your awareness. Outside, the sound of footsteps grows thinner. People are moving toward their homes, not in a rush, but with the rhythm of those who understand that there is no need to chase time. It will arrive whether you chase it or not. You watch a woman across the street hanging a string of beans to dry, her hands working in practiced motion, her mind likely elsewhere. Beside her, a small child sits, pressing his fingers into the dust and drawing shapes only he understands. They do not speak to each other, but their silence is companionable. A kind of trust lives in it. You can feel the same silence beginning to grow inside your own home now, rising like steam from a quiet pot. It invites you in, not to speak or act, but to notice. To remain still enough for a moment that your senses become a little sharper, your breath a little deeper. As you finally step back inside, the world feels smaller, but not in a way that limits you. The smallness of it is sacred. This space has held you since before the festival and will hold you after. Its walls do not judge you. They do not forget. They remember your laughter and your exhaustion, your doubts and your small joys. You feel that memory around you now as you move toward the hearth and place a few thin pieces of wood into its centre. You do not light them. Not yet. You want the darkness to come slowly tonight, like the tide rolling back to kiss the shore. There is comfort in watching it arrive, in letting the room change by degrees, rather than all at once. You sit near the unlit hearth and draw your knees to your chest, wrapping your shawl tighter around you as the coolness begins to settle more firmly. Your body feels both tired and alive, filled with the soft ache of a day well lived. The kind of tiredness that doesn't ask for sleep right away, but instead invites you to linger a little longer in the quiet. To feel the weight of your limbs, the stretch of your back, the steadiness of your own breath. You let your gaze wander across the room, to the mat where you slept, to the tiny bowl still holding the offering of dried flowers, to the small crack in the wall that you've always meant to patch but never quite found the time. Each thing holds a story, each thing belongs, and then you remember the thread. Not the dream exactly, but the feeling of it. You reach instinctively toward your small bundle of keepsakes and lift a folded piece of cloth where you once imagined the thread to be. Of course, it is not there, not in any visible way. But your fingers close around the cloth and a strange warmth passes through you. Not hot, not sudden, just the sense that something lingers, something unwritten. You hold it to your chest for a moment and listen, not for sound but for feeling, the kind that rises when everything else is quiet. Outside, the sky darkens further, drawing a veil across the last traces of sun. You hear a flute again, faint this time, so distant it may be no more than the memory of music still held by the stones. Still, you close your eyes and let it reach you. Whether real or imagined, it speaks with the same voice. The voice of continuity, of tradition not kept in temples but in lives like yours, in footsteps and cooking fires and the careful laying of mats each night. Soon you will rise, you will light the fire, you will eat a simple meal and brush the dust from your feet and lie once more upon your mat. But for now, in this dim, perfect in-between, you are content to sit, to breathe, to carry forward everything you cannot name, and the city, still humming gently with the remnants of ritual, wraps around you like the night itself. A night not of forgetting, but of holding close. The night was no longer approaching, it had arrived. It folded itself comfortably around the edges of the city, blanketing the hills and rooftops, curling like smoke through the reed thatch and between the alleys and walkways. Tenochtitlan had become a dark silhouette against the sky, a shape rather than a spectacle. and in this softened form it seemed to rest more deeply. The stars had started their shimmer, quiet and steady, scattered like seeds across the firmament, and the lake that held the city in its watery arms now mirrored them so perfectly that the world above and below became almost indistinguishable. You sat by the fire now, which had caught at last and was burning low and even, a gentle warmth against the growing chill of the clay beneath your feet. The wood had taken with little protest, as if it too had been waiting for the night to come, and now it crackled in soft intervals, its song less of flame and more of whisper. You'd eaten a little, just a small bowl of beans with squash and a crumble of dried maize, and your belly was warm, full in the way that simple food satisfies after a long day that required nothing grand, only sincerity. You sat cross-legged near the glow, your shawl gathered around your shoulders, your back resting against the worn inner wall of your home, and in this position you could feel both your own stillness and the stillness of the world around you. The city was not silent, but its voice had changed. Gone were the laughter and cries of children, the clatter of pottery, the rhythm of footsteps running across the stone. In their place the night carried softer sounds, the occasional murmur from one home to another, the distant call of a bird you could not name, the creak of wood expanding as the last warmth of the day fled the rooftops. You could almost hear the breathing of your neighbours, steady and deep, as though the entire street slept in synchrony. This was not loneliness. This was connection at its quietest, and it filled the room more than any words ever could. You picked up the cloth again, not the imaginary one from your dream, but the real one that lay folded in your lap. You held it in both hands, letting your thumbs trace the edge of its weave, and as you did, you began to feel something old and unspoken pass between your fingers. The motion of it was slow, reverent. Not for show, not for anyone else, but for yourself and the presence of the moment. The cloth smelled faintly of dried marigolds, of ash, of time itself. As you moved it gently between your palms, you thought of all the hands that had done the same across generations, of how rituals pass not only through ceremony, but through objects and the way we carry them. The fire shifted, one log collapsing gently into another, sending up a brief flutter of sparks that danced in the dark before disappearing. You did not flinch. You simply watched, your eyes tracing their short flight, your mind moving with them. Somewhere in the back of your thoughts you imagined the steps of the temple again, not in grandeur this time, not in the bright flare of festival or sacrifice, but as they might appear now, empty and waiting under the moon, holding echoes instead of crowds. You could almost see the outline of the priest's cloak in the wind, even though you knew no one stood there anymore. What remained was not the spectacle, it was the presence, the knowing. Your shoulders relaxed. You hadn't noticed they were tense, and now that they had let go, the ease that followed felt like water pooling through your muscles. You sighed, and the sound surprised you. It sounded content. That kind of tiredness that feels earned. Like you had poured yourself out and now had space again to hold something new. You leaned your head back against the wall and closed your eyes, not to sleep just yet, but to let yourself drift closer. The warmth of the fire reached you in gentle waves. The coolness of the clay balanced it perfectly. You felt held between the two. The night deepened. Beyond the walls the stars continued to shine, and the lake shimmered back at them. Inside your breath slowed, and the last thoughts of the day fluttered away like ash on the wind. Not lost, but no longer needed. You would sleep soon, but for now you simply existed, with the fire, with the cloth, with the quiet weight of a day that had changed you in small, unshakable ways. The flames had long since quieted, leaving behind a soft, pulsing heat that lived low in the belly of the hearth. The glow was steady, not bright, but it reached into the room like a silent guardian, brushing over your cheeks, painting the folds of your shawl with warmth. You hadn't moved much. There had been no need. The night outside was still and the night inside even more so. Your breath moved in and out in that slow, even rhythm that comes only when the body knows it is safe. You could have gone to your mat, stretched out your legs and pulled the woven cover over your shoulders, but something about the quiet seated near the fire had asked you to stay a little longer. And so you had. Your hands rested on your lap now, one cradling the other, fingers limp and relaxed. The cloth you had held earlier lay beside you, half folded and lit by the ember light. You glanced at it once more before letting your gaze drift away, not because you had lost interest in it, but because its meaning had already seeped into you. You no longer needed to look at it to feel what it had given. It was enough to sit in the hush and allow the story of the day to settle into your bones without chasing it. Somewhere in the distance, perhaps beyond the canal, a dog barked once, sharp and quick, before going quiet again. The sound cut the night just briefly, but it didn't startle you. It only served to remind you that life moved on outside these walls, that other homes were lit with low fires, other children wrapped in sleep, other old ones remembering stories whispered by their parents and their parents before them. There was a kind of invisible net cast across the city at night, one woven of shared breath and memory, and you were tucked gently into it, held not just by walls, but by others who had knelt in prayer and song with you only a day ago. Your eyes had begun to drift closed without you realizing it. When you opened them again, the room was darker. The embers had dimmed slightly, their heartbeat slower now. You let your head rest against the wall again and exhaled deeply, allowing the breath to leave not just your lungs, but everything else that had been stored inside you. It was not fatigue that claimed you. It was release, the kind that comes when there is nothing left to do, nothing left to say, and everything has already been made whole simply by living through it. You let your mind drift gently, not into sharp dreams, but into the space between thought and sleep where sensations rise like ripples in still water. You felt again the roughness of the square beneath your knees, the vibration of a drumbeat that had hummed up through the soles of your feet, the smell of sweet flowers crushed into the stone. You could see the boy again, the one with the flute, though this time he wasn't playing. He was just there, his face turned toward you, eyes curious and quiet. You didn't speak, you didn't need to. His presence was enough to hold something steady in you, a reminder, a thread. And in this half-lit world, neither fully asleep nor fully awake, you felt something settle deeper inside. Not knowledge exactly, more like understanding. That everything you had seen, everything you had felt in the days leading to the festival and during it and now after, it all belonged to something larger. Not just to gods or rituals or calendars marked by moon and sun, but to the rhythm of people who chose to remember, to carry meaning in the ordinary, to hold celebration not as an escape, but as a return. Your body softened further. The lines in your face relaxed. You were almost gone from the room now, not in body, but in awareness, drifting like a leaf caught in the gentle tug of a stream. The air around you held the coolness of stone and the warmth of ash. Your home had grown quieter still, but not silent. It breathed with you. It knew you, and it would keep you through the night. Sleep came not with a curtain falling, but with a hand gently laid across your shoulder, reassuring and kind. And as your thoughts slipped away, the last one to leave was a simple truth. The festival was not over. It had simply changed form. Sometime in the middle of the night, the kind of hour that lies too deep for clocks or candles, the fire finally gave its last breath and slipped into silence. It did not vanish, not fully. A few coals remained, faintly pulsing like stars smudged behind clouds, hidden but not extinguished. The room had cooled, but the warmth clung softly to the walls, to your shawl, to your sleeping body curled near the hearth. You didn't wake, not in the way waking is usually known. Instead, you shifted slightly, your face turning into the fabric of your wrap, your breath deepening in that long, slow rhythm that means the mind is travelling far. You were dreaming. Not in pictures, not exactly, not even in sounds. It was more like moving through layers of feeling, like walking through curtains of warmth and shadow, each one carrying something small and familiar. There were glimpses of the square, not filled with people this time, but with light. A kind of golden light that had no source but glowed from the stones themselves. You saw petals swirling in the air, not falling but floating, suspended as if the breeze had forgotten its direction. The boy with the flute appeared again, his instrument tucked beneath his arm, his eyes looking not at you but beyond, as though listening to something far away. He smiled without moving his mouth, and somehow you felt it within your chest, like the first sip of something warm after a cold morning. In this dream space, time had no weight. You did not know if you were seeing what had been or what would be, and it didn't matter. What mattered was the feeling of connection, the steady thread tying each vision to the next. You were not watching alone. There were others in this space, though you couldn't name them. Their presence felt like soft hands resting on your shoulders, like the press of a familiar palm against your back. The kind of comfort that comes from knowing you belong, not just to a place, but to a pattern, a rhythm. And in that rhythm, you began to feel the pulse of the city again. Not the noise of day, not the calls of merchants or the footfalls on temple steps, but the deeper rhythm, the one that hums beneath everything. The heartbeat of those who remember. The breath of generations who had ground maize and tied cloth and knelt in prayer under the same sky you now slept beneath. It pulsed through the canals and echoed off the stones and whispered along the rooftops. It was slow, steady, and unbreakable. Your dream carried you to your own hands. You saw them in the glow, not aged, not young, simply yours. They held the thread again. But this time the thread moved on its own, weaving itself through your fingers, wrapping around your wrist, circling your arms in soft loops. Not to bind, but to remind. It was as if it was saying, you are part of this. You are not alone. You are stitched into something larger than you will ever see in full, and that is enough. You sighed in your sleep, the kind of sigh that comes not from sadness, but from the fullness of being held. The mat beneath you didn't shift. The walls didn't move, but the entire room seemed to breathe with you for a moment. A slow inhale, a gentle exhale. Outside, the moon climbed higher, spreading silver across the rooftops and leaving the canals slick with reflected light. No one walked the streets now. No boats cut across the lake. Even the birds had tucked their heads under the wing. Inside your home, the quiet deepened, and still the dream continued. It no longer offered images but sensations, the feel of warm stone underfoot, the scent of damp earth after rain, the weight of a hand resting briefly on your shoulder. And as your mind drifted further, carried on the same current that had brought you through the festival and beyond, you began to understand something without needing words, that the rituals had ended only in form. Their spirit had not scattered. It had simply moved inside you. And so you slept, not with the heaviness of exhaustion, but with the lightness of one who knows they are where they belong. The night outside held steady, and within it you floated, wrapped in memory, in meaning, in a story still unfolding beneath the skin of silence. In the deepest part of the night, the kind that comes just before the first suggestion of dawn, the stars seem closest. Not because they've moved, but because the silence is so complete that you can almost hear their light. Outside, the world lies still, wrapped in the dark like a city caught mid-breath. Even the lake, always a companion to the city's pulse, reflects the heavens so perfectly that the two seem sewn together, as though the gods had cast their eyes downwards to rest gently on the water's skin. You are still asleep, nestled close to the dying warmth of the hearth, the shawl pulled up to your chin, or legs curled beneath you. The shape of your body is one of trust, the kind of posture that only comes when you know you are safe, when the walls around you carry not just your presence, but your past, your memories, your voice folded into their very surface. In the silence of that hour, even your breath becomes a kind of offering. It rises and falls like prayer, even if no words pass your lips. In your dream, things are slower now, You're no longer walking through bright squares or watching petals fall. Instead, you stand beneath the sky, though you're unsure if it is the sky of the world or the sky of the dream. There is something endless above you, and the stars shine in a way that feels more like presence than light. You're not alone. Shapes move near you, not close enough to see their faces, but their closeness brings comfort. You know they walk with you, even if they say nothing. You're being led somewhere, or perhaps you're returning. It is hard to tell in dreams. Your bare feet press against cool stone. The ground beneath you is smooth and familiar. It could be the square. It could be the steps of a temple. It could be the floor of your own home carried into this dream space. There is no boundary here. Things shift gently from one to the next without needing names. You keep walking. The stars shift slightly as you move, as if aligning themselves to your path. And still no fear comes, just stillness, just warmth. Then a sound reaches you, soft at first. A hollow rounded note, a flute, just one slow note. The same boy perhaps, or maybe the echo of him. The sound does not call you forward or back, it simply fills the space. Around you like light soaking into cloth. You stop walking and stand there, letting the sound move through you, and in that moment, something quiet stirs inside. Not a thought, not an image, just the unmistakable sense that you are being remembered. Not by another person, but by something older, something that holds all memory and all forgetting in its breath. The festival, the square, the drums, the petals, the laughter, the firelight, they are not gone. They are not even past. They have simply curled themselves into the story of the night, and now they rest beside you, unseen but not unfelt. You begin to feel lighter, like the earth beneath your feet no longer holds you as tightly, as though the lines between body and breath have softened. You do not rise, you do not fly, but something lifts within you, and your chest loosens in a way that makes you feel as if you are floating without moving. You close your eyes, not to shut the dream away, but to stay within it longer. And in that darkness, you see nothing but feel everything. You feel the stone, the warmth of the fire that once burned, the laughter of a child shared beside a canal, the gentle weight of a cloth pressed into your hands by someone who saw you. And you understand, though no voice speaks it, that this is the true ritual, not the dancing or the fire or the chant, not even the offering. It is the act of carrying, of holding something sacred quietly within and letting it shape the way you move through the world. You are part of the ritual now, even in sleep, especially in sleep. You are its vessel, and the night holds you with the care reserved for what is sacred. Outside, the stars begin to dim ever so slightly. The edge of the sky lightens just a little. But within your home and within your dream, everything remains whole. The sky was beginning to change. Not in colour at first, but in weight. The stars, once sharp and close, now shimmered with a softness, like old memories seen through tear-washed eyes. They were still there, still watching, but no longer as near. Something in the air had shifted. It was the slow arrival of dawn, not yet visible on the horizon, but moving with deliberate certainty through the branches and across the rooftops, announcing its return without speaking a word. This was the hour the city breathed deepest, held in the cradle of its own dreams. Inside your home, the ember light had faded to ash, a soft grey bed where heat once lived. The warmth it left behind still lingered in the clay and in the fabric of your shawl curled around your legs and shoulders. You remained still, not yet waking, not fully. The weight of sleep wrapped you gently, but your thoughts had begun to stir just beneath the surface. A ripple here, a drift there. You were close to waking, but the dream had not let go yet. It was still with you, still brushing the edges of your awareness like a gentle hand stroking a child's hair. The figures in your dream had not disappeared. They had simply stepped further away, their outlines fading into the same golden haze that filled the spaces between stars. The flute no longer played, but its last note lingered in the hollow of your chest. You stood again on the stone barefoot and at peace, and even without sound or vision, you felt the presence of everything that had passed through you. The boy, the dancers, the priest, the petals, the smoke, the memory of the square at dusk. All of it rested within you now, not as images, but as feelings that had taken root in your very breath. And then, as naturally as the lake receives the sky's reflection, your body shifted. Not abruptly, just the smallest turn of your shoulder, the faintest flex of your hand as it curled tighter around the fabric of your shawl. You were coming back, not all at once. Like the light itself, you were returning to the waking world in soft degrees. The air in the room felt cooler now. The sounds outside had not started yet, but the silence had changed. It no longer held the weight of midnight. It held the expectation of morning. Your eyes did not open immediately, but your breathing changed. A little deeper, a little more awake. Your body knew before your mind. The dream would stay with you, but it no longer needed to lead. It had brought you where you needed to be, and now it waited in the quiet folds of memory, content to rest. And then, finally, your eyes opened. Slowly, without alarm. The room was dark still, but not completely. A thin sliver of light had begun to stretch across the edge of the doorway, pale and silver, like a thought forming before words. The shapes around you were familiar again. The clay bowl, the faded wall, the soft lines of your mat, and everything seemed just a little clearer than before, as if the dream had polished your senses rather than dulled them. You didn't rise right away. There was no need. The day had not yet claimed you. You lay there a while longer, eyes open now, body still. The thread of the dream still wrapped loosely around your thoughts. You let it remain there. You did not try to name it or hold it too tightly. Dreams were like mist. They stayed longer when not chased. Outside, a single bird began to call, not loud, just a soft, tentative note that stretched into the cool morning air. It was answered by another, and then another, and slowly the city began to exhale. You heard the faint creak of a reed mat being rolled somewhere nearby, the whisper of footsteps brushing across stone. The city was waking, just as you were. But there was no rush. You pulled the shawl a little tighter, not from cold, but for comfort. Your fingers found the same edge of cloth they had held in your sleep. It felt different now, not because it had changed, but because you had. The night had carried you, and now, with the stars stepping back and the sun preparing to rise, you were ready to carry something forward too. You rose slowly, as one does when the weight of sleep is still, nestled in the folds of muscle and thought. The shawl slipped from your shoulders, not because you had forgotten it, but because the room had begun to warm with the breath of morning. Your bare feet touched the mat and held there a moment, grounding you, reminding you gently that this was the world you knew. The embers in the hearth had cooled into quiet grey, the last memory of fire curled in their corners. You stood, spine straightening without hurry, and crossed the small space to open the reed door just slightly. The first light of dawn slipped in like an old friend, brushing your face with the faint scent of damp earth and lake water. The city outside was still held in a soft hush, but you could hear the earlier sounds beginning to return. A soft rustle of cloth, the distant flap of a bird's wings, the low creak of someone drawing water from a jug. You stepped just beyond the threshold, letting your eyes adjust to the changing light. The sky was washed in gentle pastels, not yet fully golden, but slowly shedding its nightclothes. And in that pale calm you felt it again, that quiet echo of something still living from the days before. The ritual had passed, but the thread it left behind still held firm. You weren't stepping into a new day. You were continuing something ancient, something shared. The breeze met you at the doorway, soft and cool and full of that familiar scent that only comes when night has finally released its grip. It carried with it the moisture of the lake and a whisper of flowers that had not yet been cleared from the corners of doorways. The petals from the festival, scattered and trampled, now seemed like part of the earth itself, pressed into the stone as quiet reminders of what had passed. You stepped outside fully, drawing your shawl loosely around your shoulders once more, not for warmth, but for comfort. The light stretched before you, and everything seemed just a little gentler in its touch. The rooftops were still dusted with shadow, but already golden fingers reached over the city, nudging the day awake. You stood there for a long moment, eyes moving slowly from the corner of the canal to the far edge of the square, now empty, except for a few lingering marks on the ground. It no longer looked like a place of great ceremony. It looked like a place that had breathed something sacred and then quietly returned to itself. And yet, the sacred still clung there, not in spectacle but in memory. You felt no urgency to speak, no need to move quickly. This was a morning meant for remembering, not in grand thoughts, but in the gentle awareness of continuity. You were no longer the person who had stepped barefoot onto the square days ago. You had changed, not in appearance, but in presence. The day ahead would unfold with its own needs and duties, but for now you were simply part of the stillness. And in that stillness, everything felt whole. The first true rays of sunlight touched the tips of the rooftops and spilled down into the alleyways like golden paint. The shadows retreated with grace, not hurried, as though they too understood that this day was different. You watched the light stretch across the ground, illuminating the path where your neighbours would soon pass, where voices would rise again in barter and laughter and the rhythm of morning chores. But for this brief moment, the city seemed to exhale slowly, caught between breath and action. You stepped back into your home with the same careful quiet you'd stepped out with, your fingers trailing lightly along the adobe wall, familiar in texture but carrying a new weight. Every corner of the room looked unchanged, and yet you saw it with fresh eyes, as though the dreams of the night had rearranged something inside you rather than around you. The mat was still unrolled, the bowl still rested near the hearth. The cloth remained folded beside your things, but in the soft gold of morning it all glowed faintly, not from the sun alone but from the memory it held. You lowered yourself gently to sit beside the hearth, now cool to the touch, and placed your hands over your knees. You did not need to speak or think. You simply sat, and in that stillness you felt the full thread of the last few days pass through you. The preparations, the ceremony, the dream, the breath between each moment. It had not been spectacle alone. It had been a slow returning, a homecoming to something deeper than tradition. And now the morning carried it forward in light inside it, in the quiet presence of things not forgotten. You reached for the small wooden bowl beside the hearth, not because you were hungry yet, but because the gesture itself felt grounding. Your fingers curled around its familiar curve and you brought it to your lap, letting your thumb trace the smooth rim in circles. A bit of the scent from yesterday's maize still clung to it, subtle and sweet, like a story that hadn't quite finished speaking. Outside, the light was beginning to move faster now, slipping deeper into the city, casting long golden lines across the courtyard stones and the edges of door frames. You could hear the soft scuff of someone sweeping nearby, the gentle rhythm of bristles across stone, steady and unbothered. There was comfort in that sound, as though the world was being readied not just physically, but spiritually. The remnants of celebration, of ritual, of gathering and offering were not swept away in dismissal, but in reverence, as though even the fallen petals and scattered ash deserved to be touched gently. You felt that same softness inside you, as if something had settled after being long untethered. Not an ending, but a gentle folding. You looked down at your hands again, and they did not tremble with effort or labour. They rested, and in their stillness, you felt the echo of everything they had touched. The thread, the food, the fire, the cloth. You breathed in deeply and let the morning fill you. Not just the air, but the silence between sounds. You felt a quiet gratitude rising, not for anything new or sudden, but for everything you had carried, for how it had shaped you without needing to change your face or your name. The ritual had passed, but it had not left. It had simply become part of you. The day had begun in earnest. You could hear it now, beyond the softened hum that wrapped the earliest hours in quiet. There were voices, not loud, but alive. The kind that came with routine, with comfort, with the familiarity of neighbours calling across open courtyards, of a boy urging a reluctant mule toward the market path, of women laughing softly over the shared clatter of earthen pots. You sat still by the hearth, your hands resting calmly over the folds of your shawl, and though your eyes moved toward the doorway and the shapes shifting in the light beyond it, your mind remained steady and inward. The warmth of the earlier hours had not left you. It was there beneath your ribs, in the space between each breath, in the weight of your limbs now relaxed across the mat. The bowl still rested near your hip, its edges cool, its scent fading. But everything it had held still seemed to hum faintly in the air. You let your gaze settle on a patch of sunlight spilling across the floor. Dust floated through it in tiny spirals, almost dancing. It was nothing really, just morning light and a bit of air, but somehow it felt like a continuation of the dream, or perhaps a bridge. There was no great revelation waiting, no thunder in the sky or grand visitation from the spirits. And yet, what had changed in you was undeniable. You saw it not in the world, but in how you moved through it. Even the act of sitting still felt like an offering now, not because anyone watched or expected it, but because something sacred had rooted itself in the quiet. The memory of the festival, with all its colour and rhythm, felt softer now, like cloth worn smooth by hands that have folded it many times. You did not need to remember every detail, you only needed to know that it had lived through you, and still did. The thread, whether imagined or real, whether touched by dream or truth, was there, not wrapped around your wrist, not shining or marked by ceremony, but woven quietly through your breath, your memory, your way of watching the day unfold. You were not trying to hold on to it anymore. You were letting it rest inside you, as naturally as your own heartbeat. There was a comfort in knowing that others around you, whether they had danced in the square or watched from shadowed doorways, were also carrying their own threads, woven through different moments, shaped by different hands, but tied together nonetheless. That was what the ritual had given you. Not just celebration, not just prayer or offering. It had given you the reminder that belonging is not built only in the grand moments, but in the quiet ones that follow. In the mornings when the drums are silent, but something inside you still listens. You reach for the cloth again, lifting it with care, letting it drape softly over your hands. It felt different each time you touched it, not because the fabric had changed, but because you had. You folded it slowly, neatly, not out of obligation, but because it felt right. A gesture of reverence, even if no one saw. You placed it beside your sleeping mat, where the morning light could reach it, and then sat back once more, letting your hands fall to your knees. The day would ask for you soon. There would be food to prepare, paths to sweep, a neighbour to help with her bundles, but for now you were still within the soft afterglow of something deeper. The city outside moved with calm purpose, and the light overhead warmed the rooftops with a kind of knowing touch. You closed your eyes for a moment, not to sleep again, but to feel the weight of everything you had lived. It did not burden you, it carried you, like the thread, like the fire, like the quiet voice that had spoken not in words, but in presence. Later that day, as the sun reached its highest point and the rooftops turned warm beneath its steady gaze, you found yourself standing once more near the edge of the canal. The water shimmered quietly, broken only by the slow passage of a flat-bottomed canoe, its oars slicing the surface with a rhythm that matched the lazy drift of the wind. The reeds whispered softly, just enough to remind you that the world was always in motion, even when it looked still. You stood there with your hands resting gently in front of you, the shawl now folded neatly over one arm, its threads warmed by the sun. It was the same cloth, unchanged in colour or pattern, but like everything else it now held more than what the eye could see. Children passed behind you, their laughter skipping like pebbles across water. You smiled without turning, their joy simple and full, a sound that never asked for permission to exist. The scent of roasted maize drifted from a nearby cooking fire, earthy and familiar, and a woman's voice called out greetings to a neighbour just beyond the courtyard wall. These were the textures of the day, woven together without fanfare, but rich all the same, and as you stood watching the water, you realised that this quiet presence in the world, was the final gesture of the festival. Not the drums, not the smoke, not even the offerings placed on stone, but this still belonging, this rootedness, The rituals had been grand, yes. There had been beauty and rhythm chants and sacred steps, but what mattered most, now that all the petals had been swept and the fires cooled, was how those moments had settled inside you. Not like heavy stones, but like seeds. They would grow in the days ahead, not in sudden ways, but slowly, in the patient unfolding of morning routines, in the way you greeted your neighbour, in how you stirred your food, in the quiet you carried into sleep. The divine had not left. It had simply become less visible, choosing instead to live in the tender weight of ordinary days. You knelt at the water's edge, fingertips brushing the surface, feeling its chill rise through your skin and into your bones. The lake held the sky still, just as it always had, and the reflection there reminded you again that what is above is never far from what is below. You let your fingers dip deeper for a moment, the motion gentle, deliberate. And in that small act, you felt something close, as though the ritual had never really ended. It had simply changed its language. Behind you, the city moved with the familiar ease of afternoon. No one looked at you as you knelt there. No one needed to. They too had their own threads, their own embers still smouldering from days past. You stood again and turned back toward your home, the path now dusted in soft light, shadow short beneath the sun's gaze. With every step, the cloth warmed against your arm, and your feet met the ground with quiet surety. By the time you reached your doorway, the hush of early morning had given way to a full chorus of life. And yet, when you stepped inside, the peace had not left. It had waited. It had become part of the space, part of the mat, the wall, the bowl now empty and rinsed clean. You placed the cloth down with care, and for a long moment you simply stood there, eyes resting on the spot where firelight had once danced. And then you sat, as you always did, not from habit, but from something more sacred. You breathed in, slowly, deeply, and as the breath moved through you, it felt like a song without words, a lullaby that had been whispered by countless others before you. You closed your eyes, not to sleep, but to feel the echo of it one last time, and in that stillness everything made sense, not because it was explained, but because it was held. The story did not end. It never does. It simply lived now in the space between waking and sleep, in the breath between memory and motion, in the soft hush of a city that remembers.